My guest today is someone who has made it her mission to change the way that people feel at work. Advita Patel is the founder of CommsRebel, where she helps organizations build cultures where colleagues feel they can belong and they can thrive. She's also the co-founder of A Leader Like Me and the Asian Comms Network, and this year she became the president of the CIPR, the first person of colour in the organisation's 75-year history. Over more than 2 decades in internal communications, Advita has become a real positive disruptor. She's a coach, a speaker, and the co-author of the best-selling Building a Culture of Inclusivity. Her next book, Decoding Confidence, is on the way. And confidence is really the golden thread that runs through everything that she does. Today, we'll talk about where that drive comes from, what it looks like in practice, and what is going on in the world at the moment. Advita, thank you so much for joining us on Accidentally Brilliant.
Thank you for inviting me, Josh. I'm excited to be here.
So, first and foremost, you've talked about confidence, and I love reading your posts on LinkedIn because they always are personable. You share kind of almost personal challenges, but in a way of things that you've almost sort of overcome or about to overcome, and you're helping others. Where does that kind of focus on confidence come from for you?
It all, for me, it's always kind of been bubbling away this kind of insecurity of understanding who I was as a person. And then in 2018, I had probably one of the biggest confidence crashes of my career, where I just didn't know who I was, what I was doing on this planet, whether the world of PR and communications was for me. And I was actually seriously contemplating exiting the profession and trying something else. And then a good friend of mine, I remember I was driving down the M6 going to Warrington. And a friend of mine, I was on the phone to her and I was just complaining about stuff. You do, don't you? Like, hello, life is
You
just
need those people.
You need those people. I said, oh God, everything's so unfair. And I can't believe I have to trek all the way to Warrington for this job and blah, 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 blah. And so she said to me, she goes, she went really quiet. And I actually thought I lost her in that black hole, you know, that bit on that motorway. I was like, oh, are you still there? And she went, yeah, I'm still here. She went, I'm just thinking. She said, I'm thinking, like, what are you going to do about it? Like, you complained about everybody else and everything else and all that. I'm not saying that it isn't true that you have faced challenges in your career and people have treated you unfairly in some places, but what are you going to do? How are you going to change it? And I remember parking up in the car park and just sitting there and going, she's so right. Like, what am I going to do? So I decided, like I do in most things, is do some real deep dive research into confidence and imposter syndrome and inner critic, and why do we feel the way we feel sometimes and don't take the risks on ourselves. And we always wait for validation and permission, and we're always waiting to do the right thing, and we always worry about other people. You know, and somebody told me a fact that said, in 5 years' time, we won't know half the people that we know today.
No.
And yet we spend so much of our time and energy freaking out and worrying about what other people, almost strangers, think about who we are and what we do. And then I read a book by Shonda Rhimes, who is the producer of Scandal. She wrote Scandal.
Love Scandal.
Oh my God, Olivia Pope.
Big, huge glass of red wine.
Always. Who doesn't love Olivia Pope? Because of that series, I read her book, Shonda Rhimes, and she wrote a book called The Year of Yes. And she basically spent an entire year saying yes to opportunities and not worrying about anyone or anything. And as long as it wasn't a huge financial burden or it wasn't risk to life, she said yes. And as soon as I finished reading that book, I was like, right, I am going to say yes to most things that come my way. And I'm not going to allow fear to stop me doing that. So I'm not going to worry about what I post on LinkedIn. I'm not going to freak out about what I say on Instagram. I'm going to be cringe. I'm going to say what I want to say, because life is about living to your potential and not fearing what other people may think of you. So that's where it all kind of started. And I have a favorite quote. You can't be everyone's cup of tea, otherwise you'll be a mug.
Yes.
And I say that every day.
Yes. I think there's a RuPaul quote where he says that other people's opinion of me is none of my business.
Nope.
And it's so hard to realize
Yeah.
that, but when you do, it's quite empowering. It's interesting. I was talking to James Crawford in another episode, and we were talking about, when you first start, there are these driving forces. We talked about, having to prove people wrong.
Yeah.
And actually, over a couple of years, you sort of kind of go like, oh, actually, I've forgotten about those people.
Yeah.
This is completely irrelevant
Yeah,
now, and
yeah.
I'm only really competing with myself.
Mhm.
But it's funny that we use those things as almost a crutch to
Yeah.
keep us going.
Yeah.
How do you, not everyone can necessarily have that moment and pull up and, go off and do it. What advice would you give to us who might be facing that kind of confidence, that crash of, it can come at many different life stages? What can we do?
It's such a good question. And for me, it's about just stopping, just pausing, stopping, because we are conditioned in this current lifestyle that we're living in to work at pace. And we're always comparing ourselves to other people. We're always competing with people we don't even know. Social media has driven that kind of competitive spirit in us. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's good to kind of have that fire, to kind of motivate you. But when it's pushing you into a confidence spiral where you think you're not good enough or you don't belong in that space, then that's when it becomes a problem. And for those folks who are struggling with their own confidence or imposter syndrome or inner critic, my number one advice is just stop right now and spend some time getting to know who you are. And this seems simplistic, but it's not simple.
Yeah, no.
Because getting to know yourself, it takes work and it takes energy. If you think about it, Josh, we've spent majority of our lives since the moment we're born, from our guardians, carers, parents, to teachers, to lecturers, to bosses and leaders and managers, almost dictating who we should be and managing our kind of response to things, right? Don't do this and behave like that and be careful there. And I'm not saying that is important. We do need to learn to be safe. We need to learn to be collaborative, and we need to learn how to kind of work with others, get all that. But our identity, has always been shaped by other people's opinion of us. And we get to a certain point, I think, in our lives where we go, who the hell am I?
Yeah. Yeah, for
Who
real.
am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? What am I actually? Am I doing this because I want to do this and I like doing it? Or am I doing it because someone told me I should be doing this? And that's where I would say the unshakable confidence is built when you spend time, energy, and effort understanding yourself, unpicking the things that you have been taught but no longer serve you, and learning more about your style of communication, your values, how you live against your integrity, what is your negotiable, what's your non-negotiable, and standing firm against that. When I ask people that I work with and coach when it comes to confidence and influence, they often don't know who they are. They often don't know what they want. And they spent so much of their time trying to be somebody to fit into this mold of what other people have deemed a success, that they've lost themselves in all of that.
Yes.
So the number one step is, if you're feeling stuck, unsupported, lost, challenged, you're not putting yourself forward for things, you've got greater potential, just stop and spend some time getting to know who you are.
It's so interesting because on the one hand, we have this sort of burgeoning voice that is telling us not to share personal things on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I rally against that now. And I get it, LinkedIn should be a professional site, but I also think the work that I do, and I think the work that 90% of us do, is based on people. So I am a nosy person, not in a bad way. I'm curious and I'm interested in what people do. And I'm interested in what bits I can nick from there and put into me and that, and all that stuff. And at the same time, I also think about the incredible benefit of kind of everything that you've just said. So I personally have, I've talked about this before, I've struggled with my mental health. I've gone into therapy, and, at lots of points, it's been a case of the feedback, in a sense, has been to make sure you look after yourself. And
Yeah.
I've gone away and I'm like, well, I'm not looking after myself. I'm not like putting myself in harm's way. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
That sounds sort of flippant, but when you say, getting to know yourself in this setting, it's so hard. It's so hard for people to kind of bring the two together, because often, if you think about someone that's been in the sector for maybe 20 years, 10 years, however, it's a long time, actually work becomes who you are.
Yeah.
And that's quite hard to unpick, right?
Yeah. It's really difficult. And that's what I mean. It sounds simplistic, but it's not.
No.
It takes, it took me 2 years. 2 years of reflection, understanding, forgiving myself, not being too hard on who I was, treating myself as I would treat someone I love dearly. And that's something that we don't often do. And it may seem a bit, it's a bit twee or it's whatever, a bit fluffy, but it's true. If we treated ourselves just as much as we treated how we treat the people that we love dearly, our best friends, our family, then we would be able to, I believe, achieve whatever we wanted to achieve, because you've got that self-validation. We spend so much of our lives waiting for permission and validation from others, waiting for someone to say you're good enough, go. And sometimes it never comes. And it just depends on the environment that you're in, right? Sometimes it'll come if you're lucky and you're privileged to be surrounded by great people and mentors and sponsors, but not everybody has that. So you've got to be able to value who you are, be gentle on yourself, but also be self-aware.
Yeah.
Be self-aware enough to know, actually, where am I? What are my contributions to the world that I'm in right now that's within my control? And how am I learning and adopting and adjusting to help people around me feel confident, feel safe, feel included, feel a sense of belonging? Because it isn't about changing our personality. It's about adjusting how we may behave in a situation that may be different. So it's bending, not breaking, right?
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, Sarah Black, says that all the time. It's not about breaking yourself to fit in. It's about how do you adjust and adapt to belong.
It's so important. It's so important. And it's something that I think we just gloss over. And our industry is entirely led by people. But actually, are we even thinking about ourselves? We've almost got to become a little bit more selfish.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And are we thinking about others around us? There's been so much in our industry recently where there's some strong opinions about certain things without the consideration of the impact it's having on the people around us. And I get it. We live in a fast-paced world, as I said, and there's lots going on around us. But we have lost the art of connection, and we've lost the art of understanding, and we've lost the art of spending time together and appreciating differences, and not having to feel that we have to pick a side.
Yeah.
Because we're a paradox as human beings, right? One thing can be true and one thing can be false. It's fine. Like, you're allowed to have an opinion about certain things, but we seem to have this way of wanting, especially in PR and comms, it's like, everywhere actually, pick a side. And if you pick that side, then that means I can't be friends with you.
Yeah.
And if you pick that side, then I can't be friends with you. It's like, it's weird, right? And I think you're allowed, differences is what brings strength. In my opinion, that's where the cognitive diversity comes in, that diversity of thought that we often talk about. And in order to get that different thinking, you need different people with different lived experiences. Otherwise, you're living in an echo chamber, an information bubble.
It's scary times in the world at the moment. I saw a post from you. There's lots of posts that are, and I've DM'd you about that. It's interesting. You've posted things and I've DM'd you because, in a weird way, I almost don't want to call myself out by kind of showing weakness in a weird way.
Well, it's vulnerability. And vulnerability is something that, vulnerability is one of my habits that I talk about in my new book, because practicing vulnerability is not easy.
No.
And there's a balance, right? To your point, like, we don't want to be, there's got to be an element of what am I sharing and how is this adding value? And what am I sharing that isn't adding value? Because people do take vulnerability to another extreme, and I think it's about balance. So what you share online, I am a strong believer as it's your platform, share what you want, but be considerate about why you're sharing it.
Yeah. You co-founded A Leader Like Me and the Asian Comms Network, both centered in on representation and belonging.
Yeah.
Why do you think they were so needed, and what impact have you seen them have?
So, A Leader Like Me started when Priya Bates, who's my co-founder, who's based in Toronto, I actually asked Priya to be my mentor when I started CommsRebel. I didn't see many South Asian women working in communications who founded their own consultancy.
No.
So I was like, who can I learn from who's been doing this for a while, who may understand some of the barriers that I might face as being a South Asian woman in this space. And Priya was somebody that I'd followed for a long time online. And I actually met her in person in Vancouver when I went for an event. And we just clicked. She's about 15 years older than me. And when we chatted when I asked her to be my mentor, she actually came back and said, actually, maybe we can mentor each other. And when we had our first conversation, it was really interesting because her experiences 15 years before were exactly the same experiences I was facing today. And nothing had really shifted in those behaviors. So we were a bit like, what can we do? Like, how can we support others out there? And this was just before, probably about 4 months before the murder of George Floyd.
Yeah.
Which, as we all know, those folks who were tuned in, it transformed diversity, equity, and inclusion in those years. And we knew then that we had to show up for our community. Those underrepresented women at the point, we were working with underrepresented women of colour who worked in PR and comms. And that's how A Leader Like Me started. It was a membership initially. And then we were asked advice, as you can imagine, from other organisations on how to build inclusion and a sense of belonging through communications. So we expanded it into a micro consultancy, micro agency, to work with organisations to help them understand what belonging means for them. Asian Comms Network was founded. So Shioni Lin and Fazana Badul, the three of us have been friends for a while. And we'd met up at various times in London, just chatting about this, the differences between South East Asian and Black PR and comms folks, right? And what we often heard was we often get clumped under people of colour. You're just this kind of one entity over there. But all of us have very different lived experiences and behaviours in how we are treated in the community. Black folks have it so much worse in terms of stereotyping and behaviours. And some of our Eastern South Asian colleagues felt uncomfortable to raise issues in a community where Black communication professionals were facing so much more stronger adversity and challenge.
So so let me get it right. They felt uncomfortable to raise their own
their own issues.
concern.
Yeah, because
Right.
South and East Asian generally people generally are seen as a model minority.
Right.
So generally, without stereotyping too much, generally they are, especially Indian and Middle Eastern to an extent, are seen as going and getting their education. There is challenges in Pakistani and Bangladeshi communities still, and that's something we all need to work on and support. But generally, you're seen as someone who's pushed into a career. You hear my parents were always very keen for me to get into the sciences.
Right. Yeah.
Go and get a science degree or go and do engineering or technology. Humanities and communication were just a fun thing on the side that you did. So we all kind of bond over our kind of working in a space where our parents or carers were very not against, but didn't understand the world of communications. So when we were when you go into a space where people of color or underrepresented people are together, and the Black voices are speaking about some of the adversity that's facing them, which is about, I've got one of my best friends, Trudy Lewis, is a Black woman, and some of her stories where people are surprised and shocked that she's got a qualification or a master's, or she's got a good grasp of English, or you articulate that really well. And we've seen that. So, Jenny Field, a white woman, me, South Asian woman, and Trudy Lewis, a Black woman, three of us are best friends. So all three of us have got the privilege to see how people react to each one of us in situations and the behaviours that come along with that. We've had that lived experiences, and we've seen the difference that how Trudy's treated compared to how I might be treated and how Jenny might be treated. And it's covert, right? Most of it. Covert, yeah, that's the word. Covert, most of it. But now it's getting more overt, right? Because people think it's absolutely okay to say what they want to say and not get any consequences behind it. So
Face to face, online, or
both,
both?
a mix, mix. Like just, passive aggressive comments, the microaggressions or macroaggressions, aggressions in
Mm.
general. Just the kind of dismissal of your opinions and asking you to kind of not contribute to that because it's uncomfortable for other people to hear what you're saying. It's one of those things. And then when you keep speaking up about it, people are a bit like, all right, move on. Like it's a bit boring now, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like you're just going on about it, and it's uncomfortable for me, and I don't want to be uncomfortable because life isn't about that. So that's where Asian Comms Network came from, because we thought the Black Comms Network, which is run by Kamik, she's done an incredible job with that community, and that space is a safe space for the Black community from PR comms marketing to get together and connect and share what's going on in a safe space. We wanted something similar for our South and East Asian colleagues. And that's where the Asian Comms Network came from, to give people that space just to share what's going on. And we started it after the riots that took place last year, because a lot of Asian communication professionals who had to share the stories of what was going on in the organization or with their clients or in the media, and there was nowhere for them to talk about it. And when you see people like yourselves being attacked on the streets and you're reporting on those attacks, it can take a lot of mental toll. And if you don't have somewhere where you can talk about it, or your colleagues are uncomfortable talking about it, because people are, racism is a very uncomfortable topic for a lot of people, you don't have anywhere to share. So the Asian Comms Network was an opportunity for people to share. That's where it all started from. So it's a great network. We err on the positive side, optimism. What can we do to support the people around us? How can we connect with others? How can we bring allyship on board? How can we bring corporate partners along with us? How can we open up the conversation with people who run networks like Stephen Waddington and Socially Mobile, and Sarah Waddington, and Kamik with Black Comms Network, Shiraz with people like us? Like, how do we bring these incredible communities together from PR and comms perspective and help educate others to know more about why this specific group of people may need additional support?
What sort of impact have you seen?
The biggest impact we've seen are people feeling that they are not being judged for talking about a topic that's uncomfortable for others. So the protests we've seen in recent times in the UK, where the St George's flags, are being used to display patriotism. But we all know what it is and what it isn't, right? And people may not want to say it, but it is what it is. When you're kind of shouting, go back home, or you don't belong here, that isn't patriotism. That's nationalism. Ultimately. I'm not saying that those people, everybody who went on that march, are racist. I'm not saying that at all. But it's the context of what that shows as when you are surrounding yourself by people who are not there for patriotism. And it's political, and people don't want to get into politics, right? Oh, I don't want to talk about politics. It's not really a topic I want to talk about. It's not something we should be talking about. It's polarizing. But those topics impact the people that you work with on a daily basis.
Yeah. I find it astonishing. It's you're often, or you're taught, the things that you don't talk about are politics and money. And I think about, we might be in a much different position over the last 30, 40 years if actually we were talking about politics and money. If you think about as an agency model, you take money as one thing, perhaps, payment terms, perhaps, clients not ghosting proposals, all of those things, if we were more openly talking about those things. And I have, I posted on LinkedIn, I had a client, I just got bored, to be honest. And I felt like it was important that we're only little, but I felt it was important that we stand up for the people that are smaller than us. We've got a bigger voice perhaps than they have. And I went and found an inspirational poster thing, and I put something, basically put, pay your fucking bills, piss. And I wrote a thing about just how annoying it is. Annoying to have to follow it up all the time. Something like 190 days, ridiculous. And, everyone is kind of facing these things, but politics really is the one. Money, I think, is getting better, but politics is the one that people just avoid. And as a result, so the post that I saw from you, that I think on PR Week, the silence from the sector about the flags was so on the money, and also it so described me, because I read it and I immediately thought, I have been silent, and actually I've not been silent in my own, my personal world, but to me the two are very close. Who I am at work is not a million miles away from who I am at home, and I think there definitely needs to be more understanding, but there doesn't necessarily come understanding unless we're talking about things. And I think I've said to you, I've got a draft post about my experiences at uni, where my friendship group, people came from absolutely everywhere. And the strange thing to me about that time was that it was never, I don't think it was ever, I'm not that person that's saying like, I don't see color, but it was just never talked about, because we were all just doing the same thing. We were all just taking the mickey out of each other. And I think that we've lost that ability to sort of just speak to each other.
Just connect.
Right.
Like I said, we're kind of pushed into taking a side.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have a different opinion. And I've got this thing about, it's okay to have a different view as long as you're not harming anybody. Like you're not taking somebody's characteristic and using it for your advantage.
Yeah.
You're allowed to have an opinion about politics and the world as long as you're not dehumanizing another human being. And that's really important. You can have as soon as somebody goes into name calling or calling out someone's characteristic or going into sexist, ageist, racist commentary, you've lost the argument. You're allowed, we've lost the art of connection. We've lost the art of debate. And we've lost this kind of way of the fear of getting it wrong, the cancel culture.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that those who have been cancelled don't deserve being taken off the platform and stuff, because some have been pretty horrific. But there is this internal fear. You said, I really want to post, but I'm not quite sure. I don't know if it's like a white guy coming in on this chat, and should I have a voice and all that. And this is where it goes back to the start of this conversation, where we were talking about, we worry a lot about other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that isn't, it's not easy to not worry, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like you will worry, because if you run a business and you want clients and you want to be a success, then, some people will like what you're saying, some people won't like what you say. And we're always a bit cautious about how we get involved in these political discussions. But this is beyond politics, in my opinion. This is about people and how people are feeling. And I think it's important to have these debates and conversations in real life, so we understand each other and we can correct each other. We can learn from each other. I will always follow people online who have opposite views to me, always. And my friends were like, I don't know how you put up with it. Just block them, mute them. I don't know why you do it. I said, no, it's really important for me. And I think it's really important for anybody who works in our profession to understand the opposing view of what we have. Otherwise, we're going to get stuck in this wheel of echo chambers and information bubbles and not see the world for the reality that it is. And this is why things like Brexit happened.
Yeah.
And stuff like, and why people like Trump get voted in, right? Because we make the assumption that everybody thinks the way we think.
Yeah.
And so we don't think we need to talk about it. But in fact, it's really important to speak up about certain topics and show your support and show your allyship. And even if it's just, you don't always have to post publicly, but even if it's like a quick message to somebody in your network to go, how you doing? How's it going? Do you want to chat?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it? Let me know. I'm here if you want to chat.
It's so interesting, because when I think back to, so as a gay man, and I say my expectation, it's because I get frustrated. Most of the things that I do are because I've become annoyed about something. There were various points. I mean, there's been various points in lots of, recent political moves where LGBTQ people have come under the cosh. And I've said things, on LinkedIn where I've said exactly that. And I've said, and I don't like being a voice of our community. It doesn't sit comfortably, but I also think if nobody else is, I kind of have to, and I don't enjoy it. but I kind of have to say something. And I've said things like, make sure that you're, giving people time and just check in, like just literally, just say, hey, how you doing? And it's the same thing, but it's so interesting that I'm looking at that from my perspective and my community perspective, but I'm hearing it almost for the first time from yourself. And is that kind of, do you think it's not tribalism, but like groups of however we identify, we're just we're not seeing and hearing each other.
No, because you have to remember, if you go all the way to our ancestor time in the cave days, where our brains haven't evolved in that way, where we still connect with people who are same as us.
Yeah.
We feel safe. Our brains, in the world of neuroscience, our brains are ready, are always err on the side of caution, because they're there to keep us safe. And if there's anyone that, in those days where we're in our little communities, and if anyone looked different to how we looked, they were a threat to our community. So you went into fight or flight, right? That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
And we still haven't evolved in that. Our brain is still in that space of protection. So we have to slow our brain down to reflect and think about the conversations that we may be having about that community. So we don't fall into bias and stereotyping, which we do. Yeah. And we do, when I see a South Asian woman, I instantly magnate towards them because I feel safe in their company, because I wrongly or rightly believe that they understand my lived experience. But I also know that there's bias in that.
Yeah.
So I have to be conscious about what I'm saying and doing. And we don't often think about people who are different from us because we're so busy living our lives. And ultimately, we are all selfish. We are, even myself. And we have to stop that sometimes and go, let me pause for a second and let me just understand, what am I doing here? What have I heard? What have I read? What do I know? What do I need to do? And what's in the center of my control? And PR folks hold power, right? Because we're often seen as those trusted advisors that are advising our clients, our leaders. We hold the pen on many of the copy that we write. We have the power to change the way people may think about certain topics and how they understand certain things. It's a gift that we've been given, and how we use that gift is really important, I would say.
Can I ask, I completely agree. Can I ask, in terms of the impact of the last month or so with the kind of the flags, the protest, the I can't remember what the name of it is, what the impact has been on the community group? What are people feeling?
Hard
for us to understand.
Yeah, it's been really tough. The conversations have been so hard for people to it's just they felt upset, they felt disconnected, they felt lost, they felt isolated. Nobody's ever checked in on them. Conversations are moving by and no one's really contributing. So when they're sharing something and he's tumbleweed, it feels hurtful. And we had, I don't know if anybody saw, but in this week or last week, there was this whole drum marketing campaign, make Muslims eat pork, which was awful. Yeah. And there was a whole debate going on in a couple of WhatsApp groups. And it was just so, there was just no empathy, I would say. And I don't think it was intentional, but I think a lot of folks just didn't know what to say. And then the conversation was like, let's just move on from it. And I wrote a post. I remember writing a post in the group and saying, I get it. Context is everything when you're talking online on WhatsApp, because it's really difficult to understand nuances and tone and all that stuff. However, it's really easy for someone with an element of privilege to say, let's move on. When every single day, people, specifically in this moment of color, because that's the one noticeable sign that you're different, are experiencing when they walk out that door. My parents will check in on me every day. Make sure, where are you going? What are you doing? Make sure you text in and let us know you're okay. And it's the same for if you're a woman as well, in a sense. But it's worse now. What area are you going? I will check on the websites or online or Google Maps if I'm asked to go. Like, even when I came here with a taxi driver, I said to the taxi driver, "Oh, this area looks a little bit, sketch." And that's my own bias. But I saw a few flags flying on the side, and I saw a few guys with hoodies on and zipped up and stuff. And I was a bit like, "Oh God, this." And he was like, and he was an Asian taxi driver, and he was like, "Oh, shall I stay until you get inside?" And it's things like that. We shouldn't have to worry about that. But that's every day we're living that moment. Like, I'm flying to the US And the worry of my friends who are saying to me, make sure, you do this, make sure you got numbers ready, make sure that you go first, those kind of things. And we kind of laugh it off a little bit, of, try not to take it too seriously, but it's our everyday life. Everyday life, we don't, unfortunately, have the privilege to move on.
Yeah.
Because we're living every day. And that's what if when you work in our industry, and this is why I decided to step in as president for CIPR, because I wanted to show others that you can hopefully see change and make change, and there is a space for you, but we need our allies to allow us to experience that and give us the opportunities to have these conversations.
I said at the beginning, I think you are the first president of a person of color leading that institution, in its 75-year history. Like that. Well, it's such a paradox, because whilst you've got all of this happening here and this really difficult thing that people, at the same time, for those people, they've got somebody that they can immediately see and kind of aspire.
Yeah, exactly. Like hope.
Yeah.
I'm always about hope over fear.
Yeah.
Always, right? Like, let's not, and I try my best not to lead with fear, because fear is where you start conforming and start then losing yourself in it all, and you hold yourself back and you don't put yourself out there, and you're a bit worried about things. Oh, I'm not going to leave my house. You could get into that stage. And so I will always err on this side of optimism and hope.
Yeah.
And where can I influence? What can I say? People will say to me, like, similar to you, Josh, they'll DM me privately and go, "Oh, you're so brave for speaking up about that. You're so, I really admire you saying stuff like this." And I'm like, I have privilege. I work for myself. I don't have to answer to anybody.
Yeah.
I have a safe home. I've got an incredible community around me who'll have my back whenever I need it. I don't luckily have to worry about losing the roof over my head. If I get no work coming through, I'll be okay. And that's privilege. So I need to use my privilege to be able to stand up for those who may not have that around them.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And that's why I say to folks, look at your kind of privileges that you have around you, and what can you do to help, because not everybody's going to have that.
Yeah.
Even in the dominant culture, not everybody is going to have the opportunity or the privilege to speak up about something, because their organization has said to them, no political, no this, don't say this, don't say that, so they can't say anything. Even if somebody is a freelancer and is struggling for work and needs to work with certain organizations and can't be fussy with who they work with, they can't speak up. I get it. And there's no shame in that at all. And it's not about shaming anybody, but it's about looking at your own privileges within the communities that we serve and the industries that we work in. What change can I bring within the controls that I have?
I had in a separate world, I present on Gadio. And I think I was doing a segment on International Pronouns Day. There's a day for everything. Like quite literally, there's a day for everything. And I was speaking to my mate Paris, and we were talking about what happens when you get someone's pronouns wrong. And it took me by surprise, because Paris said to me, and I've quoted it's kind of everyone, really, when somebody gets his pronouns wrong, he will just correct them, and that's kind of it. And he said it's people will make mistakes, but also it's all about intent.
Yeah.
And I was really thrown, because the world that we're led to believe is that, especially if you think about pronouns, but if you kind of take issue by issue, you can't say anything, you can't do. And actually, the vibe I sort of get is that it's more just about intent, and it's more about not trying to hurt people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those mistakes that people might make will actually be good for education and help you to learn.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I never say if you make a mistake, it's when.
When
right, you make a mistake.
Yeah.
I get pronouns wrong. I work in the world of inclusion, and you get pronouns wrong, you apologize, and you move on.
Just move on.
Move on.
Yeah.
Some people get my name wrong all the time. You may say, the world of inclusion moves so quickly in terms of how you reference certain topics or discussions, or how people want to be seen or be referenced, moves on every day. And you will make a mistake. And it's, to your point, it's the intent. You know, I'll always refer to the case of remember the Queen's aide who got called out for asking somebody where they're from. And people are
Yes.
like, oh, what's the big deal? She's only asking where they're from. No, the big deal is that she asked where somebody's from, and then she didn't stop when that person
Yes.
gave an answer.
Yes.
She continued. And it's nothing wrong with you saying, somebody says to you, someone will say to me, where are you from? And I'll go, Bolton. I'm from Bolton. Oh, okay. End there.
Yeah.
Don't keep, I've had people go, no, but where are you from though? Where are
Yeah.
you really from? Where's home? I'm like, yeah, Bolton.
Yeah.
Down the M62. Oh, okay, no, but where are you, like where are you really, really from?
And it's strange because I think I've heard those conversations, and I was about to say, I don't know if the person even knows that is
They don't.
that's happening.
So I will say, you mean my heritage?
Yeah.
Do you mean what my heritage is? And then, oh yeah, your heritage. And that's fine, right? And I'll correct them. But my advice is, if somebody says, I'm from Bolton, or I'm from Manchester, I'm from Stockport, take it.
Listen.
Take it.
Yeah.
Take it as given. They obviously don't want to share more. If they say, oh, I'm from Bolton, but my family are from India and Kenya, and then that's great. But sometimes if they just stop at Bolton, Stockport, take it and go, oh, great, that's really interesting. So tell me more about your career. What do you do? Like, move on.
Yeah.
And that's where it's when people are like, they don't mean malicious harm, but there's an intent behind their questioning.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of saying, I know you're not really British, but I really want to know where you're from. It's a bit like that. So if you're curious about my heritage, then say, what's your heritage?
Just ask, yeah. But
what's your heritage?
Yeah. You said about, kind of leading with optimism and hope. What if you're talking to people who perhaps want to comment on this situation, feel that they should, because perhaps they comment on everything else in the world of marketing comms. If you take the drum piece, for instance, what advice would you give to someone that's sitting at a blank screen, kind of thinking, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to say it, and what would you say to that person?
Lead with curiosity.
Okay.
Always lean into your curiosity. And if you don't know what to say, then speak to your community. Speak to your network. And if you look at your network, I will always say to friends who I work with and clients I work with is, who are your network? How diverse is that network? And if it's not that diverse, then maybe you need to kind of look for a more diverse network to kind of help you understand and learn about the communities that you want to be an ally for.
Yeah.
You're not going to learn, unfortunately, by just reading a book. I mean, books are great. I'm not saying they're not. And podcasts are fantastic. But you do need to kind of immerse yourself in the communities that you want to support. And there's different types of allies. When we talk about allyship, we're not only talking about those allies who will go out protesting, stand with you shoulder to shoulder. Those folks have an element of privilege to do that, or want to do that, or have the urge to do that. But there's also allyship in terms of sponsorship and mentorship and active listening and just checking in.
Yeah.
Like, how you doing? How's it going?
Yeah.
I've just seen those awful flags. What is going on? Are you okay?
Listen, I just wanted to say.
Just want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
I'm with
so
you.
much
There's so much you can do.
That's something like that. And I've had that in my career.
Yeah.
And getting something like that, you just realize that somebody understands you.
Yeah. It's empathizing with you, who gets it, who you're not alone, because it can feel really lonely at times when it looks like the world is moving on, or the world isn't caring about you because of whatever you're being spouted at in your social media. One friend, one connection, one client, anyone who drops you a DM or WhatsApp and says, just want to check in, you all right?
Yeah.
I'm here.
It stops you in your tracks.
Yeah, it does.
Getting that.
Oh my God.
In a nice way.
In a really nice way. And it just warmed, like when I was actually in India when the protest and all that was going on, and some of my clients didn't know, and I had a few messages from my clients going, I just want to check in. Like, I've seen the news, it's really heavy. If I'm feeling the heaviness, I can't even begin to imagine what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So if you want to chat, if you want to have a conversation or whatever, but I want to let you know I'm here.
It's lovely.
It's so
It's just
nice.
lovely,
It's
right?
so nice to know that they didn't have to do that.
No.
But they did. And that's the difference you can make.
But it's, there are topics and there are things that we are comfortable talking about, and something can happen and we can do that. We can bridge that really easily. And we're not very good at talking as people. But then, as we say, there are topics that people just hide away from, and it's almost like pretend like it's not happening.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. It's really uncomfortable.
Let's move on, that type of thing.
Cringe, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, mainly for me, but for everyone that's listening, is if you were to, obviously you've got a book on this, right? If you were to kind of look at confidence as a subject and a topic, What is one thing that you would get everyone doing tomorrow to make the world a better place?
Oh, such a good question. I love that question. Do you know what? Just checking in on each other. We've spoken about that. I think that's been the theme of the podcast. And I think just that 1 minute of your day to check in on somebody and just to ask, how are you really doing?
Yeah.
That is such a powerful shift. It does not take more than a minute to do that. And it just, in the world that we're living in, a remote, world where things are mostly virtual nowadays. And I know we've got hybrid and people in and out of the offices, but you're working at such pace. And I know that I've said that a few times on this podcast, but our brains are just always moving on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. We're not really appreciating the journey, and we're not really appreciating the people that we're with. And if we can all just take a moment to, as a call to action on this pod episode, if you all just take a moment after this conversation and just message somebody you've not messaged in a long time and say, how you doing? How are things going? Not heard from you in a while.
Yeah.
Let's have a catch up.
Yeah.
That I can guarantee will transform that person's day and make you feel much more in connection with them. And I think that's one thing I would say. And that's why I wrote the book. It's not only about building professional confidence in yourself, but building confidence in the people around you.
The trickle effect.
Yeah, because it's contagious confidence, right?
Yeah.
Confidence is so contagious. And if somebody displays that confident approach, then the likelihood is the people around you will feel that.
One of the questions I've been asking is there a thread? And I wonder if the thread has changed for you in 2018, but is there a thread that runs through everything that you have done, like a topic that you bring to everything?
It is definitely confidence.
Confidence.
That's why I wrote about it. I specialize, as you know, in inclusive communication and employee experience. But what I realized on my journey, I suppose, in this agency consultancy world is most people suffer. Those people, who suffer from a lack of confidence or low self-esteem, either retreat or display toxic behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And when they are confident and they have self-belief and have good self-esteem, then the world around them is generally brighter. And that's the pattern of behaviors I've seen in the people that I work and support with. And those leaders I interviewed for my book have this unshakable confidence, and they're not these extroverted, loud individuals. And there's nothing wrong with being that. I can fall into that trap at times, but it's about having that unshakable steadiness, knowing that whatever life throws at you, you'll be okay.
Finally, what is a moment in your life that has made you feel accidentally brilliant? You've done something that you found a niche of an area that you can be absolutely amazing. You weren't expecting.
Inclusive cultures. Like I worked in internal comms for a majority of my career, and that was my, I suppose, light bulb moment that I could understand and see where the gaps were in an organization that didn't allow people to thrive and they were just surviving. So that was one of them. But a personal, accidentally brilliant one was when I did the Couch to 5K program. Honestly, I swear, I when I started that program, I couldn't even run for the blooming bus.
I can't.
And I was like, right, I'm going to challenge myself on this Couch to 5K. And I absolutely loved it. And now I run like 3 times a week. And for me, that was a personal achievement that made me go, if I can do something that I didn't think was physically possible, then the world literally is possible, right? You can do anything when you put your mind to it. And that, in a way, was a knock-on effect to the way I live my life.
Yeah.
There isn't anything out of reach if you believe in yourself.
I love that. I really love that. I know one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing, and certainly within part of the business, is trying to prove everything. So we don't put forward an idea unless we can prove that it's going to work based on X, Y, and Z. But you're almost doing that in terms of you're taking things from your personal life, finding the evidence, and then putting them forward into your professional life.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Advita, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Amazing to talk to you, and I think been really helpful for to kind of get a view of what is going on in the world.
Thank you so much, Josh. Love this chat.